Han-ul stepped forward and said sincerely. Just in case. You two should put them on. Chan-ho and Cho-young eagerly received the bracelet and kept saying. Thank you, Leader Du. Cho-young looked at Han-ul with a beautiful smile and said gently. Leader Wang Jun-young, you said I should go with Han-ul to be safe. Hearing what she said, Chan-ho suddenly realized something. He patted his head sadly. Ah, I forgot. I should have asked this person to help me repair the weapon. Suddenly there was a loud noise from the ceiling. White smoke blew out from the exhaust hole. All three were extremely surprised and raised their heads to look at the examiner. Han-ul looked at the smoke and said loudly. It's a trap. His words scared Chan-ho and Cho-young gasped in panic. Unable to comment. Then they all used their strength to break down the laboratory door and rush out. Seeing Chan-ho fumbling around but the door didn't make much of a difference. Han-ul threw his strong body into the door quickly. The door was then broken open. White smoke rose everywhere, and the group suddenly discovered that the surprise that was waiting for them had only just begun. A few dozen steps away, a group of muscular monsters were screaming and calling to them. Chan-ho was startled to realize that it was a brain. Han-ul strengthened his pink lotus sword and took a stance. Preparing to take action, the three had no way to retreat. So they could only watch as the monsters rushed towards them. Facing the crazy monster roaring with deadly lasers, Superman Han-ul strengthened his entire body, focusing his eyes to observe its weak points. Combined with his agile movements, he zigzagged his way through his fists, cutting down the monsters without having time to yawn. Then he reached out and launched golden magic at the remaining monsters. The extremely powerful attack tore his heavy jacket, revealing his fine armor, and the pressure spread from there. Another group of monsters suddenly brandished their weapons and ran over to attack the three brats. And ended up taking a series of magic bullets. Magic spread like a guillotine factory. The monsters officially cut in half. The upper and lower halves roared in pain for the last few sentences and then fell silent. Superman Han-ul majestically stood there, collected the burning mannequin, and looked around solemnly to check again. Chan-ho and Cho-young rushed over to ask. Why are there monsters here? Are you okay, Mr. Du? After a moment of silence, Han-ul's eyes flashed with fear, her voice harshly assessing. The smell in here is terrible. Everyone is being pranked by that cunning Jehu. He's watching everyone through the full HD screen. Moreover, he even curled his lips into a despicable smile. Smelling that gas mark. Congratulations to the babies who will soon be found by my monsters. People say that the mind is born of shape. It is true that the snake and centipede's heart is clearly visible on his face. Jehu's eyes gradually dilated and then he bared his white porcelain teeth and hissed arrogantly. This time let us try some of them. Stronger. Returning to Dae-sung's battle for a moment. He was sucked into a battlefield filled with dust. Weapons scattered everywhere. This was the residence of the souls caught in the crossfire of the sword. Hidden in that thick layer of dust were groups of hungry and thirsty soldiers. Walking dirty and pretending to cry. So thirsty. Let me go. Kill me. Suddenly a skeleton soldier pointed in the distance and howled. A new soul had arrived. The whole group immediately ran forward, wanting to get their share. They were so happy that they were so happy. Let's eat. Let's eat. Dae-sung defiantly stood on a high cliff looking down to observe the mass of soldiers below. He stood indifferently in place, challenging them to try to crawl and stretch out their skeletal arms that wanted to cling to him. The corner of his lips curled up into a devilish smile. His whole face was marked with contempt and cold voice said, "You probably don't know who I am. Do you? I'm the one who's doing this here." Dae-sung raised his face and smiled sarcastically. Then released magic to burn the soldiers' bones and drown them in a sea of fire. Crying and begging for mercy. It's only been a few seconds since this guy appeared. But the soldiers behind him howled and stared in horror, not daring to come close to him anymore. Outside, the two-horned monster was so pleased that he had dealt with that insolent guy that he dragged his sword and wanted to leave. Suddenly, the small image of Sol Yeon lying limply on the ground caught the monster's eye and it stopped. He rolled his eyes at the girl and then raised his sword high, meaning to kill the grass and flower bush next to it. Thoughts controlled the monster's behavior. But its body suddenly protested. The slippery sword in his hand suddenly turned and stabbed into his own stomach. A loud scream echoed in his head. And he stopped quickly. His hands holding the sword were shaking continuously like a person with Parkinson's disease. His head was full of questions when another sentence rang out. It seemed like you still didn't grasp the situation. Inside, the monster was scratching and tearing. Sweat pouring down, trying to calm himself down. But that voice was still growling. Right? The sword in the monster's hand somehow recognized its owner, turned the blade around and pierced its body. The monster's eyes sparkled with confusion. But it was too late. The fatal sword blow quickly caused its entire body to evaporate into the air. In the end, only the frost sword remained, falling flat on the ground. At this time, the system will update the progress of the Level 3 Domain Mission 136P Demon King's Corridor. Difficulty unknown. The Demon King tainted by the heavenly fragments has been destroyed. Reward 1 plus 100.000 merits. Reward 2 plus 1 servant skill point. The Demon King's current progress is 99%. Dae-sung escaped from the illusion of watching the fire burn the monster and angrily scratched his head and ears. Why'd I have to solve problems for others? The fire burned brightly for a moment and then quickly crawled under the hatch cover. In a moment, from under the tunnel lid, countless dazzling yellow light spots simultaneously flared up. Dae-sung stood and watched with a long, grumbling face. Oh, the weather is still not calm yet. Those golden spots of light quickly formed into a heroic female monster. Looking at him and shouting loudly. Who is he? I know he's confused. The system once again displayed updated information, which would adjust the death rate by defeating high-level L. The celestial body has brainwashed the Demon King, the ruler of this place, the difficulty of which is unknown. Content: kill high-level L. Target high-level L. Reward includes 100.000 merit points and 1 servant skill point. The Demon King's current progress is at 99%. Dae-sung took about 2 seconds to confirm the information with the system. Then turned around with a sour face and spoke in a disapproving voice. What are you talking nonsense about? When you're the one who broke into someone else's house? Are you the owner of these foolish creatures? The female monster did not listen to his words but instead aggressively raised her hand and wanted to slap that insolent mouth. Repent quickly, the female monster shouted loudly and then punched Dae-sung hard. But when he raised his head, his eyes widened and he discovered that cheeky guy was hovering and looking at him. Without saying a word, Dae-sung swung his knife and slashed her right arm, causing her to hide in fear. Before finding an answer, its golden arm fell down and quickly evaporated into thin air. Dae-sung was flying, preparing to strike the next blow, but had to stop because the battle souls from earlier suddenly jumped up and cried. Please destroy them. Wash away our disgrace. Give them the cruelest punishment. Ah, these guys are talking again. His beak twitched and he wanted to curse, but then decided to hold back and shout. I know, just shut up. The female monster saw Dae-sung raising his powerful voice and looked up in confusion and questioned. Tell me, why could someone like you who is not a supreme being do that to those monsters? Dae-sung was so shocked by that flattery that he loudly asked again. Did you say you stand supreme? Suddenly, 3 golden chains flashed out of nowhere and rushed towards the female monster's throat, wrapping tightly and pulling her back, causing her to stand still, widen her eyes, and try to escape. 3 guys wearing full-length suits appeared at the front door and 3 gray masks appeared at the interface. Each child had a chain that pulled the monster back, causing her to panic and beg. Teen disciples, I apologize for my sins. Please forgive me. All 3 of those guys didn't pay much attention to the female monster because their 3 pairs of red eyes were busy scanning Dae-sung's barcode from top to bottom. The sassy young man was stared at by a stranger and immediately looked up and asked. What are you doing? The 3 of them didn't bother to answer Dae-sung but looked down at the strange girl and said loudly. You break the law. The penalty is death. 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 Looking at the trio of yellow shirts who were talking crazy, Dae-sung was stunned, clenching his hand holding the blue-veined knife, clenching his teeth and hissing. Do you dare to ignore my words? Saying that, he unfurled his blue and purple mono and rushed like a rocket straight towards the other trio. When the yellow shirts raised their heads again, they stood there dumbfounded. Dae-sung is like a comet sweeping through their lives? When I looked back, all three had been slaughtered. Their limbs also broken into pieces. Then fell to the floor with a thud, logging out just as quickly as they had appeared. The female monster was extremely frightened, looking at him stuttering. How can you easily defeat the heavenly disciples? Dae-sung didn't bother to answer that silly question. He glanced over and saw the trio evaporate just like the monster's arm from before. The strange thing here was that when their father evaporated, the female monster's severed right arm suddenly bled violently. That searing pain made it roar and scream. It was so painful to see. The yellow system jumped up brightly. Congratulations on completing the Demon King's domain mission. Progress. 100% of the celestial bodies have dissipated. The Demon King and his entire army are now under ultimate control. The celestial bodies have turned into golden dragon gas. The golden chain as well as the remains of the trio from earlier continuously evaporated into the air. The female monster held her right arm in pain and looked up at the floating gold dust. His eyes sparkled with infinite regret. 2 lines of tears rolled down his cheeks along with choked sobs. Have I been abandoned by you? A moment later, the female monster's golden body disappeared in thin smoke, causing it to convulse in pain and scream. In an instant, the female monster's body shrunk into a newborn baby, her mouth wide open and crying. Dae-sung blinked, not understanding what was so sad. Why did he suddenly become so small? It didn't stop there. The child's body quickly shrunk into a golden lump just like the first time it appeared before Dae-sung's eyes. The young man was sweating profusely. After all his years of fighting monsters, he had never seen anything as miraculous as this. My eyes are so itchy. Oh my god. Dae-sung shouted to relieve stress. What's going on? Now he's turned into a fruit? He quickly walked over, grabbed the golden fruit, looked at the chair, and thought, Asia, should I break it? No, my friend. The system whispers. You have collected the heavenly gift. You can transform it. It is to serve the Almighty. Oh, if you don't let me beat you then that's fine. Dae-sung holds the fruit up in front of his face. Let's see how you turn into an animal. As soon as he finished speaking, the fruit in his hand flared up with a golden source of magic as if responding to him. A notification appears updating the status, confirming that it is in the loading process. With 60 minutes left. At this moment, he curled his lips and smiled mischievously. If you turn into a monster, maybe I will know some more information. Chan Ho's team didn't know what to do and had reached the area where the restricted sign was posted. The rolling door slid down and couldn't be opened. The trio of heroes reluctantly stood looking at the door, not knowing what the hell was going on. Chan Ho got angry and cursed at him. Is that guy crazy or what? Did he have to do that? Cho Young slowly pointed out more logical thinking. It was very likely that Professor Park's life was in danger. Before her words could be analyzed, the three stopped talking and followed the direction Han Ul was pointing. He seriously waited for the sound and prediction of the electric light superhero. He felt that something wrong was coming. Moments later, that wrong-over character appeared and walked proudly on the upper floor. One of the monster's 2 heads stuck out its tongue and licked its lips, smiling mischievously and saying hello. Hee, are you hunters? Its face was stiff. Its 2 white dragon eyes sparkled with death. And its grin became more and more cruel. Then he enthusiastically threw the body down and wanted to show it to the hunters. The monster is confident in his muscular, shoulder-length outfit, his hands clasped tightly together. The human head on the left of the monster said hello. Ho ho, it's been a long time since I've seen a human appear. The head on the right side hummed along. The inexperienced couple Chan Ho and Cho Young stood up and looked at each other, exclaiming in unison, leader do. What is that thing? Han Ul could not hide his surprise and exclaimed in response that it was an experiment to transplant humans with monsters. The monster's head kept drooling and looked at Han Ul longingly. Wow, so beautiful. If only your head was next to me. For Young to hear it, he shouted loudly in anger. This crazy guy then pulled out his magic gun, cocked it and fired. The loose-talking monster immediately ate a pile of magic bullets without even having time to caress his face. However, with that muscular body, Cho Young's bullets seemed to be just scratching the monster's itch. The person's head tilted to one side and looked at her, asking, "What are you doing? Then there's nothing left for you." Han-ul pulled his sword across the floor and rushed like lightning towards the monster. But the monster was not indifferent, so he quickly raised his axe blade to counter that attack. Even so, he raised his head and curled his lips to scold Han-ul. "You coward, you actually attacked me, now that you remind me." Han-ul let go of his left hand holding the sword and launched another magic shot close to its face. Its right head was torn off immediately before the indignant gaze of the other head. Witnessing that scene, his head was full of blue veins. He gritted his teeth and screamed, "How dare you kill my pet?" Han-ul took a few steps back and prepared to strike again, but bumped into the monster's hand holding the mace. The human head shot a red laser beam at Han-ul. Its mouth splattered with water and shouted loudly, "That's enough, you pests." Electro-optical superhero Han-ul rushed forward like an arrow, wanting to quickly take down this snake-mouthed guy. When his mirror blade was about to hit it, the monster's heavy club flew towards it. Being slapped so hard, he suddenly stuck to the nearby wall. His whole body's magic let loose and sizzled, and he sat exhausted on the floor. Before he could regain his senses, the monster reached out his big hand and approached. Han-ul was grabbed by his shirt and thrown back and forth like a ball on the floor. While having fun with a new toy, the monster was hit with several bullets passing through its head. It immediately stopped and glanced up. The person who fired the shot was Cho Young. She pursed her lips and pushed Chan Ho back. Unarmed, and resolutely moved forward, the monster discovered the beauty with bright eyes and a wicked smile. "I have to ask the doctor to give my companion a new head." At that time, in another sky, Sol Yeon had woken up. She was slowly staring at the golden egg that Dae-sung showed off. Unexpectedly, that egg suddenly cracked, revealing a snow-white aura. In the blink of an eye, the egg shattered and instantly shattered. That white aura gradually gathered and shaped into a tiny monster with beautiful butterfly wings. Sol Yeon happily moaned and shouted, "Mom and Dad, Master, is there something coming out?" The space was quiet for about 2 seconds for the three pairs of eyes to look at each other clearly. The butterfly demon began to say hello. Asked, "Hello, are you my master, Master?" Sol Yeon bewilderedly pointed at herself and asked back, "Are you talking about me?" Because it was too time-consuming to look at this lump as color. Dae-sung shouted loudly, "Hey butterfly, quickly tell me everything you know about those celestial bodies." The butterfly demon listens to words that win or lose. But what he wonders is what a celestial body is. The butterfly demon calmly looked at him and replied sincerely, "I'm truly sorry, I no longer have the memories of before. Damn it, it's really a waste of time." The hot-tempered young man pulled out his knife and threatened, "So you're just a useless worm. The result of my efforts is an insect like you." But what Dae-sung did not expect was that Sol Eun panicked and jumped forward to advise. "Wait, I also want a pet. Don't bother." Saying this, the little girl leaned close to the big and small butterfly demon. "Hey, quickly show us that you are effective. Then you will be able to keep your little life." Hearing that, the butterfly demon clasped his hands and raised his face to the sky, laughing loudly and saying, "Ah, that's right, the item shop." The space before my eyes became blurry. The building in front of my eyes shook as if it was about to fall down. Sol Eun watched and kept praising, "Wow, what a great skill," while Dae-sung was silent. He probably also found this amazing. In front of both of them appeared a grocery store with a variety of ingredients. On the left side were neatly arranged shelves of chemicals and cosmetics. Next is the shelf of unique items. The decorative pillars at the store are also made from high-quality jade. This luxury surpasses Uncle Tai Kong's exhibition buildings. Looking around for a while, Dae-sung saw a piece of paper and a strange feather. "What is a future diary? Hey butterfly, what is this?" The butterfly happily flew away to introduce himself. "Well, this is a disposable item. It will tell users important information about future events. You can buy it with achievement points." Dae-sung smacked his lips. telling me about the near future. The system flashes a notification. This is the future diary. We are providing the most useful information to users. Information provided will be valid within 24 hours from the time of purchase. Can be purchased once a week. Do you want to buy? He didn't think much and quickly clicked to buy immediately. The diary page fluttered and the brush began to write enthusiastically as if someone was controlling it. Dae-sung waited anxiously to see the names of his acquaintances printed on the paper. Sung Chan-ho, Shin Cho-young and Do Han-ul for the next hour. The young man put his hands on his hips and looked at the future diary page. When the brush stopped writing, the information on the paper became clearer. Not knowing what he wrote, Dae-sung grimaced, clenched his teeth and growled. What is this? Outside the red dungeon gate. Everything was normal. Dae-sung finally completed his mission and made a comeback. Sol Yeon was awkwardly following behind when he asked back. You can go home by yourself. Right? Oh yes. She was surprised and thought he would invite him out to eat again. Sol Yeon refused and started whining and begging. Why did you leave your juniors behind? Let me follow you. Dae-sung couldn't hear it. So he made up some excuse. Just fix the doll's eyes and move on. Sol Yeon sulked. Her sparkling eyes looked at him intently, calling out to Big Brother. There's a limit to demands. Little one. Dae-sung is really exploring his ears. He tilted his head, glanced coldly and scolded. Don't let me repeat that again. The little girl was scared. So she quickly closed her mouth and didn't dare say another word. The battle inside the laboratory with the human head transplant monster is getting tense when Han-ul is completely defeated by the onion monster. The compressed air inside his elegant suit was compressed and suddenly tore through the layer of his shirt, rising violently and making a hissing noise. Seeing compressed air rising from the enemy continuously, trying to cover the room white, the monster glanced worriedly, but he was right to be worried. Han-ul had returned with the Super VIP Pro armor hidden in his shirt. Looking at the two lotus pink aura cores, this armor looks thin and light with stainless material, and is also quite resistant to heat and external impacts. Han-ul stood up. The armor on his body hissed and emitted white smoke, looking so domineering. Looking up at the disgusting monster, Han-ul scolded loudly. You bastard. Then he launched the mannequin and rushed forward like a rocket, giving the monster a gentle kiss on the left cheek. Seeing that it wasn't enough love, he gave it a few more blows to make the dumpling's cheeks evenly swollen. Too surprised, the monster with a dark face staggered and almost fell. Enough was enough. The island monster shouted loudly, wanting to stop for a break in the middle of the match. What do you mean it's heaven or something that I'm afraid of? Han-ul raised his mannequin-enhancing hand to get close to it and placed a spell on it, making it startle. He shouted loudly, Quantum Magic Attack. Released red lotus petal magic to blind the monster in front of him. Then kicked and punched the monster in the face. The pressure from the magic and Han-ul's punch made the monster's entire body bruised and vomiting blood. Finally, his brother landed a blow that knocked the monster away. Han-ul hugged his body covered in ghostly pink mannequins and stared straight ahead to observe the monster's situation. He didn't look too good. Behind him, Chan-ho and Cho-young saw him acting unusual, so they called out in panic. Mr. Du. Chan-ho was sweating all over his face, trying to regain his composure and silently evaluate. So Leader Du, Han-ul's body is indeed made up of all kinds of aura weapons. Han-ul turned back to look at his teammate and slowly replied. I need more time to recharge the ET. Chan-ho quickly interrupted, stating his conclusion from now. It seems we are having to play a game created by that guy. After all, the giant monster implanted between a human and a beast was dead. And the electro-optical superhero's heart was still intact. That was the result that Jae-hyo did not expect at all. Looking through the full HD screen, he grimaced and scolded. Damn, I didn't expect to use it. I wanted to capture that guy alive. Jae-hyo pressed the upgrade button 10 times, determined to make it right this time. Superman Han-ul, after a fierce battle, is now forced to squeeze more ET cores. Chan-ho on the side looked at him and wondered in bewilderment. Han-ul is an S-rank hunter. Does that Jae-hyo really think he can harm him so easily? A few peaceful minutes passed. The rolling door of the warning area suddenly opened. White smoke billowed out, and a pair of animal legs appeared. Chan Ho and Cho Young were startled and frightened, because the white smoke in front of their eyes grew more and more as the escalator door pulled up. And the dark shadow of the mysterious person gradually appeared to be a human being. But it was definitely a monster with curved horns and red laser eyes. At first glance it looked like a horse's head and face. Plus it was holding a long, slender sword in its hand. Witnessing this scene, Jaehyo hid behind the screen, rubbing his chin and smiling complacently. I still needed a few of their parts before they were dismembered. The white smoke evaporated and the goat monster officially stepped out, grinning to greet the hunters. Cho Young angrily mumbled and scolded. What a beast-like monster. Holding a small short knife in his hand, ready to enter a solo battle. Han Ul was forced to stop the process of assembling the ET core. Stood staring at the goat monster and then coldly assessed. This one was estimated to be S rank. His words were like lightning hitting Chan Ho and Cho Young's ears. In their situation, having to fight against such a powerful monster like this was like fighting an egg against a rock. Facing the S-rank two-horned goat monster over there, the Du Sung Shin trio stood still and observed it for a long time. Worried and not knowing how to fight it, the monster seemed to realize that. It began to walk quickly forward, deliberately dragging the long sword on the floor, creating an ear-splitting sound. Han Un immediately released mana to cover his entire body and prepared to fight. The goat monster with a long beard and red-orange eyes growled as if assessing him. Very quickly, Han Un rushed forward to give it a blow as a greeting. But the monster quickly dodged left and right, continuously diving to avoid Han Un's continuous attacks. How could Han Un's arm be grabbed by the monster and then squeezed? He painfully opened his eyes and realized that it was actually faster than him. Right at that moment, blood gushed out from his arm. Han Un's right arm was torn off by the monster, then thrown into the air a few times and then let him land freely. Chan Ho witnessed it with his own eyes but didn't want to believe it. He screamed loudly. It was impossible. Cho Young didn't hesitate any longer and rushed straight forward. She decided to dry her blood on this goat monster. Red didn't care much, and was about to turn around and cut a few more fatal blows, when Cho Young rushed forward and shouted loudly, "Monster!" Then swung his hand and slashed his sword, releasing mana to attack the monster. But she was still young and green. The monster just moved slightly to the left and successfully dodged her attack. While he was still speechless, before he could turn around, he threw his knee and kicked Cho Young off the wall. She fell to the ground but her body was not in pain. Looking at the bracelet on her hand, she was sure it was because the protective bracelet had already emitted energy to create a barrier to protect her. On this side, Han Un tried to suppress the pain and continued to use his other hand to shoot mana diagonally at the monster, killing it horribly. The goat monster was body summed and furiously rushed towards Han Un. As it passed him, it grabbed his remaining arm. Han Un screamed in pain and fell to his knees. Before long, the monster launched another frontal attack at him. To make sure he was full of onions, it stopped to confirm, then used its foot to hit him in the head a few times. Han Un's right arm and then his left arm were torn off and thrown into the corner of the wall. Chan Ho couldn't take his eyes anymore. He got angry and screamed loudly. The damn goat quickly stopped, his scream successfully attracting the monster's attention. Its image gradually faded and then disappeared as if it had never existed. Moments later, he appeared in front of Chan Ho, facing the ferocious goat monster. Chan Ho, although sweat poured down his face, still glared at it, seeing Chan Ho's bitter look of not being able to do anything. The goat monster smiled triumphantly, but with just that much, it was a bit difficult to threaten him. Even though he was scared pale, Chan Ho still bluntly challenged me, and I know someone stronger than you. So I won't die here today. I don't know if he understood or not, but he immediately raised his armpit to prepare to punch this young man to death on the spot. Chan Ho only has a mouth but no muscles. He has to close his eyes tightly to endure the death that is coming to him. Suddenly there was a fierce boom. It wasn't the goat monster's blade hitting Chan Ho, but something black and strange that blocked it. Even the goat monster had to widen his head. Surprised eyes. This was the first time Chan Ho had seen his friend's black demon summoning. So he just kept his eyes open. They floated up from the ground just by their strange shape and the air they emitted, which was enough to make the goat's claws immediately dodge away. As for the goat monster, it was already 10 meters away from that pile of slime. But now the summoned black demon had gathered its size to be taller than Chan Ho, blocking him and the monster, and it gradually echoed, making gurgling sounds, revealing Dae-sung's insolent face. How could Cho-young expect that Dae-sung would appear at this moment? She widened her eyes and looked at him in surprise. But Dae-sung didn't pay any attention to the others, just raised his face and asked his friend, "Hey Chan Ho, aren't you dead yet?" He smiled and cursed back. "Crazy or something? How could I die so easily? My intelligence is also S-level." The goat monster ignored the two close friends' confides and immediately changed direction to attack Cho-young, who was alone in a corner over there. Chan Ho saw it but didn't have the speed to stop and attack the young girl. Ken let out a fierce sound. The goat monster's blade collided directly with the pile of slime just now, saving Chan Ho's life. Cho-young had absolutely no idea what this was. And even the goat monster thought he was hallucinating. It was clear that this was something that had just appeared a moment ago. So why was it here to stop it? My sword? Turning around to see that strange name remained in the same position. The only difference was that Dae-sung's lips had a smile and a mumbled invisible technique. With a whooshing sound, there was only a beam of bright light left where he had just stood, and his body had disappeared from everyone's sight. The goat monster looked east and west to see where that guy had disappeared to, but he couldn't find it. So suddenly he tensed his body and opened his mouth wide to scream. The high-frequency sound penetrated Cho-young's head, causing her to immediately cover her ears, feeling like her eardrum was about to burst. Chan Ho was no better. He put his hand up to cover his ear but still felt terrible ringing. Suddenly, the goat monster turned its head to the left. Then it rushed towards it and swung its sword, hitting the air and hearing a clear sound. Dae-sung's stealth technique ended. He loomed up with a black dragon sword blocking the slash. While smiling, this black goat determined its location using sound waves. Which is interesting. He found it interesting. But the person sitting in front of the screen watching all the developments did not. Teeth clenched. Jae-hyo only felt angry when a stone lizard appeared in his nose. I heard that this guy Han Dae-sung is the biggest threat in the Eastern Branch. His hand reached for a red button with a white skull printed on it. I can't bear to use chimeras, but I can't help it. Having said that, Jae-hyo slammed his hand on that red button. You can clearly hear the automatic sound. Unlocking the toxic gas. Chimeras has 30 minutes left before the self-destruct system is activated. He stood up, muttered curses at this damn Han Dae-sung, then stomped out of the surveillance room. Well, whatever you do is fine, as long as you can make it impossible for him to leave here alive. The laboratory's system quickly started counting down 30 minutes, and the alarm bell rang loudly, making people feel uneasy. No one knew what was going on, but the automatic notification sound activating the self-destruct system knew it wasn't a good omen. Dae-sung just felt so annoying. He was cursing loudly, suddenly heard the sound of the sliding door being lifted at an extremely fast speed. From there appeared several air currents and loud footsteps sounded like there was an army is approaching. Boom! A strange foot that did not look like a human placed it firmly on the metal bridge, from which more than a dozen different types of monsters stepped out, as if the goat monster had summoned them from some gate. On the iron bridge there appeared dozens of monsters. And below, facing Han Dae-sung, there were also about a dozen of them with all the same sizes. That guy Nam Jae-hyo has experimented on so many people. Cho-young could not answer the question of the guy standing next to her because she was also surprised. The laboratory was nothing more than a factory that produces monsters. Han-ul didn't bother to look but commented that there were some animals that were created from the same substance. Chan-ho knew that was all he could comment on, but his ability to participate in battle was completely zero. So he turned his head to look at his friend, hesitantly asking for help. Hey, you have to handle it alone. That's it. Dae-sung didn't mind anything about it. But he was not a patient person. Looking at the two extremely alert faces mixed with a little fear. His initial intention was to use fire to burn the whole place down in a moment. Disappear. His whole body was filled with aura. A new plan had formed in his brain. But there was nothing useful to do here. Snapping 2 fingers, Ms. King's transformation was activated in an instant. With Dae-sung as the center, the whole laboratory suddenly echoed with toot-toot sounds like wind passing through a cliff. Smoke surrounding him. Dae-sung was created from somewhere. Then followed the wind and scattered around. Something appeared in this area, causing the bloodthirsty monsters to look back and forth without knowing what was approaching. Hanan didn't know what it was either. He could only feel a terrible power flowing into every cell of his body. The man and woman on the other side didn't even know, so they could only watch with wide eyes at the developments that were taking place. Then suddenly, there were strange groaning sounds. Looking back, the entire floor and space of the laboratory had changed into a completely different area. Under everyone's feet. Now, it looks cracked like a field that hasn't been watered for a long time. Well, it's clear that I wasn't even dreaming. Chan-ho couldn't believe that his friend could still do this. And Cho-young in front was also confused. How unreasonable. Did he just teleport? Han-ul didn't think so. He transformed the entire laboratory area into another space. This is a formidable technique. Ignoring the other 3 people's hesitation and surprise, Dae-sung just raised his eyebrows and ordered, "Come out quickly, Dark Army." Following his call, the Black Wolf Army appeared first, followed by the commander of the soldiers who crawled out of the ground. Looking like he had risen from the grave. Behind him, adding a bit of effect, the Demon King of the domain is loudly speaking. "Please wait for my master's orders." Dae-sung's order was extremely simple. Destroy them all. The army commander acted as the vanguard and rushed forward with fearlessness to confront the laboratory's monsters that were also rushing in the opposite direction. Soon the sounds of all kinds of weapons clashing violently could be heard in space. Our troops and the enemy were busy. But Dae-sung very calmly turned back to inform everyone that it was safe to come here. Having finished speaking, he disappeared in front of the 3 of them, without any further comment. But the target was the guy who created all these troubles. Jae-hyo was about to get out of here when suddenly he heard a bang like someone pounded on a metal plate very close to him. The elevator suddenly went into a stopped state. When he looked over at the wall on the left, he saw a large hole in it, where Dae-sung's triumphant face appeared. "So you were here." Just looking at his face made Jae-hyo's father pale. He couldn't say a word. He felt his body freeze when Dae-sung landed not far from him. His whole body radiated an evil aura that made people suffocation. Staring at the guy in white, he questioned, "Just like that, why did he run away so quickly?" Even though Jae-hyo was afraid, he still remained speechless and praised his opponent. "You are more than what I thought. You have won. Now kill me." He opened his arms wide, challenging Dae-sung to quickly come and kill him. But killing was too simple. He reached out and grabbed the assistant's black shirt, pulling him closer so that Jae-hyo could see his face more clearly. What are you plotting?" The question sounded so clear. But the assistant let out a loud noise. I don't know if it was because he didn't hear clearly or because he was trying to defend himself. In general, any choice is fine. Dae-sung doesn't care. He smiles cruelly. After all, he just got a pretty interesting skill. Now is the time to use it. Try it out. That was when the system sensed that the Demon King's power had been temporarily transferred to the Supreme Being. And the Demon King's special skill, the One-Eyed Demon, was activated. Jae-hyo only felt like a stream of air moved from Dae-sung's eyes to him. He screamed, "What are you planning to do?" But could not stop the blue air from entering his retina. Soon a memory opened up when he was writhing and screaming on the tile floor. That was also the first time that strange eyes seemed to have transcended time and found Jae-hyo in the laboratory. Not far away, Lee Soku was holding up a test tube containing some solution with a calculating smile. The days of experimentation on Yoongjun Chil are also clearly visible. The conspiracy plan or whatever this assistant did to the blonde guy was all clearly visible in front of Dae-sung. He worked like a dog until the Bishop of the East, Elam, appeared and placed his hand on his head. Because you have sacrificed enough souls for the temple, I will grant you a favor. From now on, every time you die, your soul will be reincarnated into another haunts. At that time, Jae-hyo felt so happy. He finally had a new body. In the real world, Dae-sung tightened his grip on Jae-hyo's neck, pressing him against the wall behind him. He was half laughing, half threatening. This trash, the one who sacrificed others to live forever. What a coincidence. He is exactly the type that Dae-sung hates the most. He smiled savagely. I will not let you have your satisfaction. Not far away, the laboratory's self-destruct system was still buzzing loudly. With 1 minute left before the system self-destructed, the door leading to the operating room suddenly opened from both sides, revealing a white head with horns, just like a goat monster seen from behind. However, that person took a lock and inserted it into a small box with red lines. Twisted it hard, causing the voice to automatically speak, restarting the self-destruct system. Having stopped the self-destruct mechanism, standing in front of the console was clearly a monster identical to the one who attacked Chan-ho and the others. But he didn't look aggressive at all, but instead looked confused, wondering what was going on. At that moment, the door leading into the surveillance room was kicked open from the outside, to the point that it emitted smoke. Dae-sung appeared, looked indifferently at the monster and opened his mouth to ask, "Hey, another goat?" This goat doesn't know who this insolent guy is. But he's still very polite. He asked in return, "Who are you?" "Me. I should ask you, right?" Looking at this young man's face, you know that he is not an easy person. The other man spoke in a loud voice. "I am Park Dong-hyuk, the owner of this laboratory facility." Only then did Dae-sung's expression change. Wasn't Park Dong-hyuk the person his whole group was looking for today? A moment later, in the surveillance room that recreated the entire system image, Park Dong-hyuk sat on a swivel chair facing 4 people who came to find him. After understanding everything, he paid the most attention to the story of Leader Wang being arrested again. "Clearly it was my fault." Dong-hyuk stood up and firmly declared, "Everyone can rest assured. I have enough evidence of Nam Jae-hoo's illegal activities with the Red Ghost Gang. So he will soon be arrested." With such prestigious words, Chan-ho still felt strange, silently asking Cho-young next to him, "Is this really Professor Park?" She secretly looked at the goat monster and answered,